The sedative residue on the pacifier caught the light like a film of poison, and Darlene's hands trembled as she held it beneath the fluorescent bulbs of the supply closet. Her granddaughter Mia had been sleeping 16 hours a day for the past week, and now she understood why. The tiny droplets clinging to the rubber nipple told a story that made her stomach clench with rage. "Good day, everyone. I am grateful you are here with me. Before we begin, I would really love to know where you are watching from. Comment your city below. Now, let me tell you about something that changed my life forever." Darlene tucked the pacifier into a plastic sandwich bag, her movements deliberate despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. The closet door stood partially ajar, and through the gap, she watched the main playroom of Sunshine Steps daycare. 23 children sat in unnaturally perfect rows, their small bodies slack and docile. Not one cried. Not one ran. They stared at cartoon bears dancing across the television screen with glassy, unfocused eyes. She pressed her back against the metal shelving, feeling the sharp edges of supply boxes dig into her shoulders. Her certification as a pharmacy technician from 30 years ago suddenly felt relevant again. That oily residue, the chemical smell that clung to the rubber. She recognized it. Antihistamines, probably. Maybe something stronger. The owner's voice drifted from the front office. Patricia Ewan had hired Darlene 3 months ago, praising her experience raising 4 children and caring for 7 grandchildren. The pay was modest, but the location was perfect, just 6 blocks from her apartment. Darlene had been grateful for the opportunity, for the chance to work with children again after retiring from the post office. She slipped the bagged pacifier into her cardigan pocket and moved toward the closet door. The linoleum floor creaked beneath her practical sneakers. She froze, counting her heartbeats. 1, 2, 3. No one came to investigate. Through the doorway, she could see the afternoon assistant, a thin college student whose name tag read Becca. The girl moved between the children with mechanical efficiency, checking diapers, wiping noses, replacing pacifiers from a bin near the sink. The same bin Darlene had just discovered, filled with matching blue and pink pacifiers that all carried that telltale residue. Darlene's phone pressed heavy against her hip. She could call the police right now. But what would they find if Patricia had time to clean up? Empty bins, scrubbed pacifiers, plausible deniability. She needed more evidence. She needed documentation that would be irrefutable. She stepped into the playroom, arranging her features into casual warmth. Her reflection in the window showed a woman who looked calm, professional. Inside, her pulse hammered against her ribs. "How are our little ones doing?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. Becca barely looked up from the changing table. "All quiet. Best Tuesday we've had in weeks." Darlene moved to the activity corner, where building blocks sat untouched in their baskets. A toddler named Marcus, she'd learned his name from the cubby labels, swayed slightly where he sat. His head bobbed forward, jerked back up, dropped again. 18 months old, and he moved like someone fighting sleep at the end of a long day. But it was only 2 in the afternoon, and according to the sign-in sheet, he'd arrived at noon. Darlene crouched beside Marcus, her knees protesting the movement. She reached out, steadying the boy's shoulder as his head dipped forward again. His skin felt warm through the cotton shirt, but not feverish. Normal temperature, abnormal lethargy. She pressed her fingers gently against his tiny wrist, feeling for his pulse. Slow. Too slow for a toddler who should be running, climbing, testing every boundary. His eyelids fluttered, revealing pupils that looked slightly contracted even in the dim playroom lighting. Behind her, Becca's shoes squeaked against the linoleum. Darlene didn't turn around. She kept her attention on Marcus, running her hand across his forehead, letting the gesture look motherly, concerned, but not alarmed. Her other hand slipped into her cardigan pocket, fingers finding her phone. She angled it carefully, snapping 3 quick photos of the boy's drowsy state, the timestamp visible in the corner of each frame. "He seems very tired," Darlene said, still not looking at Becca. "Some kids don't nap well at home. They catch up here." The response came too quickly, too practiced. Darlene finally stood, her spine crackling, and turned to survey the rest of the room. 16 children between the ages of 1 and 3 years old. 12 of them were either sleeping or in that same dangerous twilight state as Marcus. 4 others played quietly in the corner, but their movements seemed sluggish, underwater. She walked to the toy kitchen area, where a little girl with cornrow braids sat clutching a plastic teacup. The child's name was written on her cubby, Sophia. Darlene knelt again, ignoring the sharp pain in her left knee, and held out her hand for the teacup. Sophia's grip barely tightened. The toy slipped from her fingers without resistance. Darlene caught it, then offered it back. The girl took it with fingers that fumbled, nearly dropping it again. No curiosity in her eyes. No interest in the stranger invading her space. Just that heavy-lidded stare that Darlene had seen before, years ago, on patients recovering from anesthesia. Her throat tightened. She forced herself to breathe normally, to keep her face neutral. The phone came out again, this time for a video. She pretended to check a text message while the camera captured Sophia's delayed reactions, her drooping posture, the way she swayed even while sitting down. "Their parents must appreciate how peaceful they are here," Darlene said, pocketing her phone. Becca moved to the supply cabinet, pulling out a stack of fresh bibs. "Patricia runs a tight ship. Parents love us." The cabinet door swung open wider than Becca intended, revealing neat rows of bottles, sippy cups, and small medicine containers lined up with military precision. Darlene's eyes locked onto those containers. Brown plastic, opaque, with child-proof caps. No labels visible from this distance, but they didn't need to be in a daycare supply cabinet. Medications were supposed to be kept separately, documented, administered only with explicit parental permission and written instructions. She counted 7 containers. 7 different medications, or 7 doses of the same thing? Darlene moved closer, her path seeming casual, as if she were simply crossing to check on another child. She passed near enough to the cabinet to read the sticky note attached to the inside of the door. A grid, handwritten in blue ink. Names down the left side. Not all the children, but about half. Times across the top. Check marks in various boxes. A dosing schedule. Her hands clenched inside her pockets, fingernails biting into her palms. The pain kept her grounded, kept her from gasping, from showing any reaction that might alert Becca. She continued past the cabinet to where a boy slept in the reading nook, his body curled on a cushion, thumb in his mouth. "What time do they usually wake up?" Darlene asked. "Most of them are good until pickup. Makes afternoon easier for everyone." Easier for the staff, easier for Patricia, easier for the bottom line when you only needed 1 assistant instead of 3 to manage 16 toddlers who should have been bouncing off the walls. Darlene straightened one of the cushions, her back to Becca, and pulled out her phone again. She zoomed in on the cabinet, capturing the medication containers, the schedule taped inside. The angle was awkward, but she got 3 shots before Becca's footsteps moved closer. She switched to her messages, pretending to type, then slipped the phone away and returned to the main play area. Her heart hammered so hard she could feel it in her jaw, taste copper on her tongue. Darlene walked to the supply closet near the bathroom, making her movements deliberate, unhurried. Her pulse thundered in her ears, but she kept her breathing steady, her expression neutral. The closet door creaked as she opened it, the sound amplified in the quiet room where children slept in unnatural stillness. She knelt on the worn linoleum, pretending to inventory the paper towels and disinfectant spray on the lower shelves. Her hands moved items around, creating soft, rustling sounds that matched the pretense. Behind her, Becca's footsteps retreated toward the front desk. The chair squeaked as the assistant settled back into it. 3 minutes passed. Darlene counted them by the sweep hand on the wall clock visible through the closet doorway. She stood, grabbed a bottle of window cleaner she didn't need, and closed the door with a soft click. The windows overlooking the playground needed no cleaning, but she sprayed them anyway, working the squeegee in long strokes. The repetitive motion gave her hands something to do while her mind raced through options. Call the police from here, and Patricia would be alerted immediately. The daycare owner had connections. Her husband sat on the city council. Her sister worked in the district attorney's office. Any investigation would take time to build, time during which evidence could vanish, schedules could be destroyed, medication bottles could disappear down drains. She needed more than photographs of a medicine cabinet. She needed proof that couldn't be dismissed or explained away. The boy on the reading cushion stirred, his thumb slipping from his mouth. His eyelids fluttered, but didn't open. Darlene watched his chest rise and fall, each breath shallow and even, too even. A normal toddler waking from a nap would stretch, whimper, call for a parent. This child lay motionless except for that automatic breathing, his body slack. She moved to the small kitchen area separated from the main room by a half wall. The counter held a row of sippy cups, each marked with a strip of masking tape bearing a child's name. She picked up the one labeled Marcus and held it to the light. A thin film coated the inside, barely visible. She unscrewed the lid and sniffed. Nothing distinctive, just the faint sweetness of apple juice. The refrigerator hummed beside her. She opened it, scanning the contents. Juice boxes, string cheese, yogurt cups. A plastic pitcher of what looked like lemonade sat on the top shelf, half empty. She pulled it out and examined the pale yellow liquid. No sediment, no cloudiness. She returned it to the shelf and closed the door. Becca appeared at the half wall, her eyes narrowed. Everything okay? Just familiarizing myself with where things are. Patricia said I'd help with snack time tomorrow. The lie came easily, smooth and unbothered. Becca's expression remained skeptical, but she nodded and returned to her desk. The assistant's fingers flew across her phone screen, typing rapidly. Darlene's stomach clenched. She pulled out her own phone and checked the camera roll, making sure the photos had saved properly. The images were clear enough. Bottles visible, schedule readable. But would it be enough? She thought of her granddaughter, of how many mornings she'd dropped little Maya off at daycare centers around the city before moving to this neighborhood. How many times had Maya been unusually quiet after pickup, falling asleep in her car seat before they'd driven 3 blocks? Her jaw tightened until her teeth ached. She walked back into the main room, past the sleeping children, to where 2 girls sat at a low table with building blocks. These 2 were awake, but their movements were sluggish, dreamlike. One girl picked up a red block, held it for several seconds, then set it down in the same spot. The other stared at the pile of blocks without touching them, her eyes glassy. Darlene crouched beside the table, bringing herself to their eye level. "Are you girls having fun?" Neither responded. The first girl picked up the same red block again, repeated the exact motion. Up, pause, down. Her arms moved like they were underwater, fighting resistance that shouldn't exist. The front door chimed. Patricia entered, her heels clicking against the tile, her expression shifting from professional warmth to something sharper when she saw Darlene kneeling by the table. The daycare owner stopped 3 feet away, her leather bag hanging from one shoulder, keys still in her hand. "How's orientation going?" "Very educational." Darlene straightened slowly, her knees protesting the movement. She kept her face neutral, composed, while her mind calculated distances and exits. Patricia stood between her and the front door, blocking the most direct route out. The back door led to a fenced playground, another dead end. "I've been watching how the staff manages nap time," Darlene said, brushing imaginary dust from her slacks. "Very efficient system." Patricia's keys jingled as she shifted her bag to the floor. She moved toward the office, her gait purposeful, each step measured. The woman's shoulders had tensed beneath her silk blouse, a subtle shift that transformed her posture from welcoming to defensive. Darlene followed, maintaining a casual pace despite the adrenaline threading through her bloodstream. Her phone felt heavy in her pocket, weighted with evidence. Through the office doorway, she watched Patricia's gaze sweep across the desk, lingering on the schedule that Darlene had left slightly askew, not quite returned to its original position. The daycare owner turned, positioning herself behind the desk like a barrier. Her fingers drummed once against the wooden surface, then stilled. "Did Brenda show you our medication authorization forms?" "She mentioned them." Patricia pulled open the top drawer, the same drawer where the bottles had been hidden. Her hand disappeared inside, emerged with a manila folder. She laid it on the desk, flipped it open to reveal a stack of printed documents. Each page bore a parent's signature at the bottom, official-looking checkboxes marked for various conditions: ADHD, anxiety, sleep disorders. Darlene stepped closer, scanning the forms. The handwriting varied, the signatures all different. But the dates clustered together. 10 forms signed within the same week last month, another batch from 3 weeks ago. Too convenient, too synchronized. "Every child here whose parents requested pharmaceutical assistance has proper documentation," Patricia said. Her voice had dropped to a lower register, conversational but edged with steel. "We follow state guidelines precisely." The printer in the corner hummed, though no one had activated it. Darlene's attention snapped to the machine, watching the warm-up light blink amber. Patricia's hand rested near the phone on her desk, her thumb positioned over the keypad. "I'm sure you do." Darlene backed toward the doorway, making the retreat seem natural, unhurried. "I should probably check on the children." She turned before Patricia could respond, walking back into the main room where Brenda still sat with her magazine, apparently oblivious to the tension crackling through the building. The younger staff member glanced up, smiled reflexively, then returned to her reading. 3 more children had joined the nappers on the floor. They'd arranged themselves in a rough circle, heads pillowed on foam mats, breathing shallow and synchronized. 17 children sleeping now. Darlene counted twice to be certain, her eyes moving from one small form to the next. The 2 girls at the block table remained in their stupor. One had slumped forward, her cheek resting against the tabletop, the red block still clutched in her fist. The other had finally picked up a blue piece, but held it motionless in the air, her arm frozen mid-reach. Darlene's chest tightened. She moved to the water fountain mounted on the far wall, filled a paper cup, brought it to the girl holding the block. She pressed the cup gently against the child's free hand. "Here, sweetie, take a drink." The girl's fingers closed around the cup with mechanical slowness. She raised it toward her mouth, stopped halfway, lowered it again without drinking. Water sloshed over the rim, darkening the collar of her pink shirt. Behind her, Darlene heard Patricia's office door close with a decisive click. Footsteps approached, steady and deliberate. She set the cup on the table and turned. Patricia held a clipboard now, her professional mask firmly restored. She smiled, but the expression didn't reach her eyes. "I just realized we never completed your background check paperwork," she said, extending the clipboard. "State requirement before you can be left alone with the children. I'm sure you understand." The forms clipped to the board required her address, social security number, emergency contacts, information that would make her traceable, identifiable, information that would tell Patricia exactly who was asking questions. Darlene accepted the clipboard, glanced at the top page. Her thumb brushed against her pocket, confirming the phone's presence. "Of course. Should I fill this out now?" "If you have a few minutes." Patricia gestured toward the chairs lined against the wall near where Brenda sat. "Take your time. We're very thorough with our vetting process." The emphasis on thorough landed like a threat. Darlene carried the clipboard to the chairs, sat in the plastic seat farthest from Brenda. She clicked the pen attached to the board, positioned it over the first blank line labeled full legal name. Through the window, she could see the parking lot, her Honda still visible in its spot near the entrance. 20 feet away. Might as well be 20 miles with Patricia watching her every movement, with 17 drugged children sleeping on the floor behind her. Her hand trembled slightly as she pressed pen to paper. Darlene's pen stopped moving. Her peripheral vision caught Patricia stepping closer, heels clicking against the linoleum with measured precision. The woman's shadow fell across the clipboard, darkening the half-completed form. The front door burst open. A man in paint-splattered coveralls stumbled through, his work boots tracking dried mud across the threshold. His face was flushed, sweat beading across his forehead despite the October chill outside. "Where's my son?" His voice cracked. "Where's Caleb?" Patricia pivoted instantly, her body blocking the man's view of the sleeping children beyond the reception area. She raised both hands in a calming gesture, but her fingers were rigid, nails catching the fluorescent light. "Mr. Morrison, please lower your voice." "Caleb is fine. He's just—" "Don't give me that." Morrison pushed past her outstretched arms, his shoulder connecting with her elbow. She stumbled backward 2 steps. "I got a call from my ex-wife. She said she came by here yesterday, and Caleb was unconscious. Said he slept 16 hours straight when she got him home." Darlene set the clipboard on the adjacent chair. Her fingers found the phone in her pocket, thumb hovering over the power button. Morrison was moving toward the main room, his boots heavy against the floor. Patricia grabbed his arm, her knuckles whitening with the force of her grip. "Sir, your ex-wife doesn't have custody this week. She wasn't authorized to—" Morrison wrenched free. "Authorized? My kid sleeps all day, and you're talking about authorization?" The commotion pulled Brenda from her chair. She positioned herself in the doorway to the main room, arms crossed, blocking Morrison's path. Her stance was wider than necessary, feet planted like a bouncer outside a nightclub. "You need to calm down," Brenda said, her voice flat. "You're scaring the children. They're asleep. It's 10 in the morning and they're all asleep." Morrison's hand shot past Brenda's shoulder, pointing at the carpet visible beyond her frame. "What the hell is wrong with this place?" Darlene stood. The movement drew all 3 pairs of eyes to her position near the wall. Patricia's jaw tightened, a muscle jumping beneath her carefully applied foundation. Morrison's chest heaved with rapid breaths, his paint-stained hands clenching and unclenching. The phone in Darlene's pocket felt heavy as lead. Her thumb pressed the power button through the fabric. 3 seconds. That's how long the recording function took to activate once the phone powered on. 3 seconds while Patricia's attention was divided, while Morrison provided the perfect distraction. "Ma'am, I need you to wait outside." Patricia's words were directed at Darlene, but her eyes remained locked on Morrison. "This is a private matter between—" Morrison lunged forward. Not at Patricia, but past her, toward the main room where his son presumably lay, among the other sleeping forms. Brenda shifted her weight, raising her forearms to block his advance. The collision was brief but violent. Morrison's momentum carried him into Brenda's defensive posture, and both staggered. Patricia moved with surprising speed. Her hand shot out, catching Morrison's wrist as he tried to push past Brenda's bulk. She twisted, using his own forward motion against him, and suddenly Morrison was bent at an awkward angle, his arm locked in Patricia's grip. "You're trespassing," Patricia said through gritted teeth. "Leave now, or I call the police." "Call them!" Morrison's free hand fumbled for his phone. "Call them right now. I want them to see what you're doing to these kids." The words hung in the air. Darlene's recording app had to be active by now. The phone always took exactly 3 seconds. She'd timed it before. She pulled her hand from her pocket slowly, letting the device remain concealed but ensuring the microphone wasn't muffled. Brenda grabbed Morrison's other arm. Between the two women, they forced him backward, his boots scraping against the floor as he fought their combined strength. His phone clattered from his grip, skittering across the linoleum to stop near Darlene's feet. She didn't move toward it. Instead, she watched Patricia's face. The professional mask had cracked completely now, revealing something cold and desperate underneath. A woman protecting something worth protecting, something worth drugging children to hide. Morrison's shoulder hit the doorframe. He grunted, pain flashing across his features, but his voice remained strong. Caleb, can you hear me?" No response came from the main room. Only the continued silence of 17 sleeping children on a Monday morning, when they should have been playing, learning, making noise. Patricia's fingers dug deeper into Morrison's wrist. "Your custody agreement specifically states—" "Screw the agreement!" Spittle flew from Morrison's lips. "My son is drugged. I know it. His mother knows it. And now you're going to explain why." The accusation landed like a physical blow. Brenda's grip loosened fractionally, her eyes darting to Patricia's face, looking for guidance, looking for denial. Finding neither. Darlene's heart hammered against her ribs. Her phone was recording every word, every sound of the struggle. Evidence. Real, concrete evidence of Morrison's accusation and Patricia's non-denial. Patricia's voice dropped to a whisper, but in the enclosed space, every syllable carried clearly. "Get him out! Now!" The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Morrison's body went rigid. His muscles coiled beneath Brenda's grip, and for one terrible moment, Darlene thought he might actually break free. The tendons in his neck stood out like cables. His face flushed dark red, veins pulsing at his temples. Then something shifted in his expression. The fury drained away, replaced by something far more dangerous: calculation. His shoulders relaxed, his breathing steadied. When he spoke again, his voice carried the flat, measured tone of a man who'd made a decision. "Fine. I'm leaving, but I'm taking Caleb with me." He wrenched his arm from Brenda's loosened grip and shouldered past Patricia before either woman could react. His boots thundered down the hallway. Darlene moved to follow, her body acting before her mind caught up, but Patricia's hand shot out and caught her sleeve. "Don't!" The word came out sharp as broken glass. Darlene yanked free, fabric tearing slightly at the seam. She reached the main room just as Morrison swept Caleb up from his mat. The boy's head lolled against his father's shoulder, limbs dangling like a rag doll. No resistance, no awareness. Morrison's hand cradled the back of his son's skull, protective and gentle despite the violence still radiating from every line of his body. "Put him down." Patricia's voice came from behind, steady now, professional. "Or I'm calling the police." Morrison paused at the door, Caleb's weight heavy in his arms. He turned slowly, and Darlene saw tears tracking down his cheeks. Not the angry tears of frustration, but something deeper. Grief. Recognition of a line about to be crossed. "Call them," he said. "Please, call them right now." Patricia's hand went to her pocket, then froze. Her fingers trembled slightly, hovering over the phone. The seconds stretched out, thick and suffocating. Around them, 17 other children slept on, oblivious. The fish tank bubbled its endless rhythm. The clock on the wall ticked past 9:15. Morrison adjusted his grip on Caleb, shifting the boy's weight more securely against his chest. His jaw clenched, unclenched. His eyes swept the room, taking in each sleeping form, and Darlene watched recognition bloom across his features. He'd thought it was just Caleb, just his son. The realization that it wasn't, that every child lay in the same drugged stupor, seemed to hit him like a physical blow. His knees buckled slightly. He caught himself against the doorframe, still holding Caleb tight. "All of them," he whispered. "Jesus Christ, all of them." The words hung in the air. Brenda made a small sound in her throat, halfway between a gasp and a sob. Her hand flew to her mouth. Patricia's face remained perfectly blank, but her stillness told its own story. The kind of frozen immobility that came from having no good options left. Darlene's phone felt like it was burning through her pocket. Still recording, capturing every second. Her fingers itched to pull it out, to make the recording visible, to force this moment into the light. But something held her back. An instinct that said visible documentation might make things worse, might push Patricia past calculation into desperation. Morrison straightened slowly. Caleb's head shifted against his shoulder, and for one brief moment the boy's eyes fluttered. Not quite opening, just moving beneath the lids, some dream or semi-awareness trying to surface through whatever chemical fog held him under. "Dad?" The word came out slurred, barely audible. More breath than sound. Morrison's entire body shuddered. His arms tightened around his son, protective and fierce. When he looked up at Patricia again, something had changed in his eyes. The calculation was gone, replaced by pure, focused rage. "What did you give him?" Patricia didn't answer. She'd pulled her phone out now, fingers poised over the screen. Not dialing. Not yet. Just holding it like a weapon. Like the threat of authority might be enough to regain control of a situation that had long since spiraled beyond anyone's control. Darlene moved closer to the nearest child, a girl she recognized as Emma from drop-off that morning. She knelt beside the mat, her knees cracking with the descent. Her hand hovered over the child's shoulder, wanting to shake her awake, knowing somehow that wouldn't work. This wasn't natural sleep. This was something induced, something artificial keeping these kids under. Emma's chest rose and fell in the same too-slow rhythm as all the others. Darlene pressed 2 fingers to the girl's wrist, finding the pulse, steady but sluggish. Her medical training from 4 decades ago came flooding back. The basics never left you. Heart rate too slow for a child this age. Respiratory rate depressed. Classic signs of sedation. Her stomach twisted. This wasn't just wrong. This was criminal. This was assault on 17 defenseless children whose parents had trusted them to keep their babies safe. Behind her, Patricia's voice cut through the silence. Security is on their way. The word security landed like a match in a puddle of gasoline. Darlene's pulse hammered against her temples as she straightened from Emma's mat, her knees protesting the quick movement. Through the tall windows, she caught the flicker of headlights sweeping across the parking lot. 2 vehicles, moving fast. Her mouth went dry. Jameson was already on his feet. His son clutched against his chest with one arm, while his free hand grabbed for his phone. The boy's head lolled against his father's shoulder, oblivious to everything. Patricia backed toward her desk, her fingers still dancing over her phone screen, typing something rapidly, calling for reinforcements, building her narrative before anyone else could tell the truth. Darlene's mind raced through scenarios, each one worse than the last. The police would arrive. Patricia would spin a story about hysterical parents, about false accusations, about dedicated caregivers being attacked by conspiracy theorists. She'd done this before. Darlene could feel it in the woman's calculated movements, see it in how she positioned herself near the doorway, like someone who'd rehearsed this exact scene. The medication bottles still sat on the counter where Darlene had found them. Evidence. Real, tangible proof that couldn't be explained away with smooth words and manufactured concern. She lunged for them, her arthritic fingers closing around the plastic containers just as Patricia moved to intercept. "Don't touch those!" But Darlene was already shoving them deep into her cardigan pockets, the bottles clicking together as they settled against her hip. Patricia reached for her arm, and Darlene jerked backward, her elbow connecting with the edge of a low shelf. Pain radiated up her arm, sharp and immediate. A stack of construction paper tumbled to the floor in a cascade of bright colors that seemed obscene against the nightmare unfolding around them. Car doors slammed outside. Voices carried through the evening air, deep, authoritative. Darlene's heart felt like it might burst through her ribs. She glanced at the sleeping children, 17 small bodies that needed someone to fight for them, someone to make sure this evidence didn't disappear into whatever system Patricia had clearly corrupted from the inside. Jameson was at the window now, peering through the blinds. His free hand trembled as he held them apart. 3 men, not police uniforms. They're coming to the side entrance. The words confirmed what Darlene had already suspected. This wasn't about law enforcement. This was about containment, about making a problem disappear before it could spread beyond these walls. Her legs felt weak, that familiar tremor in her left knee that came when she'd been standing too long, but she forced herself to move toward the back of the room, where a second door led to the storage area. Patricia blocked her path, arms spread wide. The woman's face had transformed from professional concern into something harder, more desperate. Sweat beaded along her hairline despite the room's air conditioning. Her silk blouse had come partially untucked, her perfect facade cracking at the edges. "You're making a terrible mistake. Those medications are prescribed by a licensed physician. Everything here is completely legal and documented." Darlene didn't answer. She'd spent 6 decades learning when words were worthless, when action was the only language that mattered. She feinted left, then pushed past Patricia's right side, using her shoulder to create space. The younger woman grabbed at her cardigan, and Darlene heard stitches pop as she wrenched free. The bottle shapes pressed hard against her side as she stumbled through the doorway into the dim storage room beyond. Behind her, heavy footsteps echoed in the main hallway. Multiple sets, moving with purpose. Keys jangled, radios crackled with static. Darlene's breath came in short gasps as she navigated between shelving units loaded with art supplies and educational materials. Her eyes adjusted slowly to the reduced light, searching for another exit, another option. A hand grabbed her wrist from behind. She spun, raising her free arm defensively, then recognized Jameson's face. He'd followed her, his son still unconscious against his shoulder. The boy's small hand hung limp, fingers curled slightly inward. "There's a fire exit, far corner." They moved together through the maze of storage, Darlene's hip screaming in protest with each hurried step. She could hear Patricia's voice in the main room now, theatrical and breathless, explaining to the arriving men about unstable individuals making wild accusations, about stolen property, about the need to secure them before they could harm the children. The lie was so smooth, it made Darlene's stomach churn. How many times had Patricia performed this exact script? How many concerned parents or suspicious staff members had been silenced, discredited, disappeared into legal tangles and threatened lawsuits? The fire exit door glowed with its illuminated sign in the darkness. Jameson reached it first, slamming his palm against the push bar. An alarm shrieked to life, piercing and urgent. The sound drilled into Darlene's skull as they burst through into the cool evening air. Her lungs pulled in desperate breaths that tasted like freedom and terror in equal measure. The parking lot stretched before them, sodium lights casting everything in sickly orange. Her sedan sat 3 rows back, and she fumbled for her keys with shaking hands. Behind them, the alarm continued its wail. Shouts erupted from inside the building. Footsteps pounded toward their position. Darlene's fingers finally closed around her keys just as the fire door exploded open behind them. 2 security guards emerged, their bulk silhouetted against the fluorescent spill from inside. The larger one pointed directly at her, his mouth moving in commands she couldn't hear over the still screaming alarm. She ran. Her hip joint felt like shattered glass grinding against itself with each stride. Jameson kept pace beside her, his son bouncing limply against his shoulder. The child's head lolled with each jarring step, and Darlene caught a glimpse of the boy's half-open eyes, pupils dilated and unfocused, even in the bright parking lot lights. The sedan's locks disengaged with a chirp that seemed impossibly loud. Darlene yanked the driver's door open, threw herself behind the wheel. Her hands trembled so violently the keys scraped against the ignition 3 times before sliding home. Jameson wrenched open the rear door, carefully maneuvering his son into the back seat. He positioned the child's head on his lap, checking the boy's airway with practiced fingers that suggested prior medical training. The engine roared to life. Darlene's foot slammed the accelerator before Jameson had fully pulled his door closed. The sedan lurched forward, tires squealing against asphalt. In the rear-view mirror, she watched the security guards sprint toward their position, one of them speaking urgently into a radio clipped to his shoulder. She whipped the steering wheel hard left, cutting between parked cars. Her side mirror clipped a truck's tailgate with a crack that sent plastic fragments spinning across the pavement. The impact jarred through her entire body, but she kept her foot pressed down, weaving through the lot toward the exit. A dark SUV suddenly blocked their path, its headlights flaring to life like accusing eyes. Darlene recognized the vehicle from the director's reserved parking space. Patricia sat in the passenger seat, her face visible through the windshield, phone pressed to her ear. The woman's expression held no panic, no fear, only cold calculation. Darlene jerked the wheel right, mounting the curb with a bone-rattling thud. The sedan's undercarriage scraped concrete as she drove across the landscaped median. Decorative rocks scattered like bullets beneath her tires. A small, ornamental tree caught her front bumper, the impact whipping branches across the windshield before the sapling tore free from its mulch bed. "They're calling the police," Jameson said from the back seat, his voice steady despite their wild trajectory. "Patricia's making it sound like kidnapping." The sedan bounced off the median back onto pavement. Darlene aimed for the parking lot's secondary exit, a narrow lane typically used for delivery vehicles. Her speedometer climbed past 40 in a space designed for 15. The vials in her jacket pocket pressed against her ribs, a hard reminder of what they were risking everything to protect. Red and blue lights suddenly painted the street beyond the exit. A patrol car pulled into the narrow lane, blocking their escape route completely. The officer behind the wheel had one hand on his radio, the other already reaching toward his door handle. Darlene stood on the brakes. The sedan's anti-lock system pulsed beneath her foot, the pedal chattering against her sole. They stopped 3 feet from the patrol car's bumper. In the back seat, Jameson caught his son as the boy slid forward, cradling the child's drugged body against his chest. The officer emerged from his vehicle, hand resting on his holstered weapon. He was young, maybe 30, with the careful movements of someone still following academy protocols to the letter. Through the windshield, Darlene could see his eyes scanning their vehicle, cataloging evidence, building his assessment. Behind them, the SUV had closed the distance. Patricia climbed out, her movements unhurried, confident. She straightened her blazer and approached the patrol car with the bearing of someone accustomed to authority listening when she spoke. Darlene's hand moved to the gear shift, dropping into reverse. The officer's posture changed immediately, his hand tightening on his weapon. She froze, calculating angles, distances, the physics of what would happen if she tried to ram past either vehicle. The vials pressed harder against her ribs as her breathing accelerated. Jameson leaned forward between the seats. He set his phone on the center console, its screen displaying an active recording. Red numbers counted upward, marking seconds of captured evidence. "I sent copies to 3 news stations while we were driving," he said quietly. "Video of the medication room, pictures of the vials. Your testimony recorded and uploaded." Patricia reached the officer's position. Her mouth opened to speak, that same theatrical concern already arranging her features into a mask of worried authority. But her eyes tracked sideways, catching sight of Jameson's phone through the sedan's windshield. Her expression flickered just for an instant before the mask reformed. The instant had been enough. Darlene saw the truth there. Patricia knew the game had shifted. Evidence existed beyond her control now, scattered into digital spaces she couldn't contain or discredit. Story block 910. Darlene's fingers remained wrapped around the gear shift as Patricia's phone emerged from her blazer pocket. The woman's thumb moved across the screen with practiced precision, her lips forming silent words as she typed. The patrol officer shifted his weight, glancing between Patricia and the sedan, his confusion visible in the tight set of his shoulders. 3 blocks away, sirens pierced the morning air. Different tones, higher pitched than the cruiser behind them. The sound multiplied, converging from multiple directions. Patricia's head snapped up from her phone, the mask slipping again. She stepped backward from the patrol car, her heels scraping against asphalt. The first news van rounded the corner 2 minutes later, its satellite array visible above the traffic. A second followed, bearing different station logos painted across white paneling. Cameras emerged from windows before the vehicles had fully stopped. A woman in a coral blazer jumped from the passenger seat, microphone already in hand, her photographer jogging to keep pace. Patricia pivoted toward her SUV. Her driver had already started the engine, exhaust blooming in the cold air. She moved faster now, the theatrical confidence replaced by something sharper, more desperate. The coral-blazered reporter intercepted her path, microphone extended, questions firing rapid fire about drugging allegations and unlicensed medications. The patrol officer's radio crackled. His supervisor's voice cut through the static, instructing him to secure the scene and await detective units. His hand dropped away from his weapon, his other hand rising to key his radio and confirm. He approached Darlene's window with different body language now, official, but no longer threatening. Behind him, Patricia had reached her SUV. She climbed in, slamming the door as cameras captured her retreat. The vehicle lurched forward, cutting across the parking lot toward a side exit. 2 more news vans blocked that route, their crews spilling out with equipment already deployed. The detective arrived 40 minutes later. She was younger than Darlene expected, maybe 35, with copper-colored hair pulled back in a severe bun. Detective Rivera, her badge read as she approached. She carried a tablet under one arm, her free hand extended toward the sedan's window. Ms. Holmes, I've been reviewing the materials your colleague uploaded. Jameson had already provided his statement to a uniformed officer, standing beside the patrol car while cameras kept rolling from the perimeter. He met Darlene's eyes across the distance, his expression showing exhaustion, but something else underneath. Relief, maybe, or vindication. Darlene extracted the vials from her coat with careful movements, setting them on the detective's palm one by one. The morning sun caught the liquid inside, amber and clear, innocuous looking apart from what they represented. Rivera produced evidence bags from her jacket, sealing each vial with methodical attention to procedure. The parents have been notified, Rivera said, her eyes tracking across her tablet screen. Emergency pediatric evaluations are being arranged for every child currently enrolled. The state licensing board has already suspended the facility's operating certificate. Darlene's hands trembled against the steering wheel. The adrenaline that had sustained her through the night was draining away, leaving hollow exhaustion in its wake. She watched through the windshield as more official vehicles arrived. County Health Department sedans, additional detective units, a mobile crime lab. Patricia's building stood 3 blocks distant, its cheerful exterior unchanged, but yellow tape was already being strung across the entrance by uniformed officers. Parents had begun gathering on the sidewalk, their faces displaying shock, anger, desperate concern. Some clutched children against their chests. Others stood alone, their arms empty, phones pressed to ears as they made frantic calls to pediatricians and lawyers. Rivera leaned down to Darlene's window again, her expression softer now. You'll need to come to the station. Full statement, formal evidence chain documentation. But I want you to understand something first. She gestured toward the building, the gathered parents, the news crews capturing everything. Those children are getting help now because you acted. The evaluation protocols will catch any developmental impacts early enough to treat them. You did this. Darlene nodded, not trusting her voice. Her muscles ached from hours of tension, her eyes burning from lack of sleep. She watched a mother collapse on the sidewalk, supported by another parent as sobs racked her frame. The weight of what those families were experiencing pressed against Darlene's chest, making breathing difficult. But she had acted, had refused to ignore what she'd discovered despite the risks, despite Patricia's power and connections. The vials were secured now, the evidence documented, the children being protected. She started the sedan's engine, following Rivera's unmarked vehicle toward the police station. In her rearview mirror, Jameson climbed into his truck, falling into the convoy behind her. The news vans remained at the scene, their cameras still rolling, capturing Patricia's empire crumbling in real time. Storyblock 1010. 6 months later, December sunshine streamed through the community center's tall windows, casting geometric patterns across the polished floor. Darlene stood near the refreshment table, watching children dart between clusters of adults. Real laughter echoed off the walls, unforced, authentic, alive with energy that no chemical could manufacture. A little girl with braids decorated in red beads ran past, tagging another child before sprinting toward the indoor play structure. Darlene tracked the movement, noting the coordination, the genuine joy lighting the child's face. She'd been one of the first evaluated after the raid, her blood work showing elevated sedative levels that had taken weeks to fully clear from her small system. Now she moved like children should, chaotic, unburdened, free. Jameson approached from the left, 2 paper cups of coffee balanced in his weathered hands. He'd shaved his beard since summer, making him look younger despite the silver threading through his hair. The community center bore his construction company's logo on a plaque near the entrance, donated renovations that transformed the aging building into a safe space for affected families. "Turnout's better than last month," he said, passing her the coffee. His shoulder brushed hers as they stood side by side, watching the organized chaos. Darlene sipped the coffee, grateful for its warmth against the winter chill that seeped through the windows. 47 families had joined the support network she'd helped establish. Parents who needed resources, counseling referrals, developmental assessments for children still recovering from prolonged exposure to Patricia's pharmaceutical cocktails. The criminal trials had started in October. Patricia faced 63 counts of child endangerment, along with medication trafficking charges that carried decades of prison time. Her attorneys had tried suppressing the evidence, claiming improper collection procedures, but the vials Darlene secured maintained perfect chain of custody. Rivera's testimony had been damning, clinical, irrefutable. The daycare building sat empty now, windows covered with plywood, a foreclosure notice stapled to the front door. Parents had filed civil suits totaling millions in damages. Patricia's bail had been revoked after she attempted to flee to Costa Rica using a fraudulent passport. A woman with close-cropped gray hair waved from across the room. Darlene recognized her from the previous support sessions. Grandmother raising 2 nephews who'd attended Patricia's facility for 18 months. The boys had exhibited severe withdrawal symptoms initially, screaming fits and tremors that required medical intervention. Today, they sat at a craft table, working on paper snowflakes with focused concentration. "Mrs. Holmes?" A young mother approached tentatively, a toddler balanced on her hip. The woman's name badge read, "Volunteer," and Darlene remembered her from the television interviews after the arrests. She'd spoken publicly about her daughter's lethargy, the way teachers had insisted it was normal development when the mother knew something was desperately wrong. "Thank you for organizing this," the mother continued, adjusting the toddler's position. "The pediatric neurologist we were referred to said Kiana's cognitive tests are back in normal range now. 6 months ago, I didn't know if—" Her voice caught. She didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. Darlene reached out, squeezing the woman's free hand gently. The toddler, Kiana, grabbed at Darlene's bracelet with chubby fingers, examining the silver links with intense curiosity. Alert, engaged, present in ways she hadn't been when chemicals dulled her natural curiosity into artificial compliance. "She's beautiful," Darlene said simply. The mother nodded, tears tracking down her cheeks, but she was smiling. She moved away toward the snack table, Kiana babbling nonsense syllables over her shoulder. Jameson shifted beside Darlene, pulling folded papers from his jacket pocket. "New volunteer applications. 5 more counselors want to donate time, and someone from the pediatric hospital offered to run quarterly screening clinics, free of charge." Darlene scanned the documents, noting names and credentials. The network had grown beyond anything she'd imagined that night in the SUV outside Patricia's facility, hands shaking as she dialed Rivera's number. What started as evidence collection had transformed into community healing. Families supporting each other through trauma no parent should experience. Rivera herself appeared near the entrance, out of uniform in jeans and a sweater. She'd been promoted to detective after the case closed, her methodical evidence processing praised by prosecutors. Now she volunteered security for support meetings, ensuring parents felt safe sharing their experiences without media intrusion. She caught Darlene's eye, nodded once, then resumed her position by the door. The community center director called everyone's attention, announcing the next session would begin in 10 minutes. Parents began corralling children, wiping sticky hands, gathering scattered toys. The organized chaos shifted toward purposeful movement, families claiming seats in the main room where counselors would facilitate discussions. Darlene watched them settle. These parents who'd trusted caregivers with their most precious treasures, and had that trust violated in unconscionable ways. Some still struggled with guilt, questioning how they'd missed the signs. Others channeled their rage into advocacy, pushing for stronger daycare regulations and mandatory surveillance systems. All of them showed up, kept showing up week after week, doing the hard work of healing. A boy, maybe 7 years old, approached, tugging Darlene's sleeve. "Miss Holmes, my mom says you're the one who saved us. Is that true?" Darlene knelt down to his eye level, studying his face. Clear eyes, focused attention, no trace of the pharmaceutical fog that had stolen months of his childhood. His mother hovered nearby, watching with protective vigilance. "Your mom saved you," Darlene said. "All these moms and dads. They believed you when you couldn't explain what felt wrong. They kept asking questions until they found answers." The boy considered this seriously, then nodded and ran back to his mother's side. Jameson helped Darlene stand, her knees protesting the movement. Age made itself known in small ways, stiff joints, slower reflexes. But her mind remained sharp, her purpose clarified by everything that had unfolded since June. They moved toward the main room, joining the circle of chairs where families gathered. Darlene took her usual seat near the window, where she could see both the group and the parking lot beyond. Old habits, learned through decades of observation and assessment. Patterns recognized and analyzed. She'd retired from social services officially in October, her pension finally processed after 38 years of public service. But retirement hadn't meant stopping, just shifting focus toward the work that mattered most. The counselor began the session with breathing exercises, grounding techniques to manage anxiety. Darlene participated, feeling her shoulders relax incrementally, the weight she'd carried for months easing slightly. The battle wasn't finished. Patricia's trial would continue for months. Civil suits would drag through years of litigation, and some children would need ongoing support into adolescence. But progress was tangible, measurable, real. Through the window, winter birds landed on bare branches, their songs faint through the glass. Inside, children laughed and parents spoke with voices no longer hollow with fear. The community center hummed with life, messy, complicated, authentic life that couldn't be manufactured or suppressed. Darlene closed her eyes briefly, listening to the sounds of healing taking root. Did you like my story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story. With love and respect.